Do you remember Mr. Freeze, the villain from the Batman films? A man who could only survive in sub-zero temperature, carrying his frozen world with him wherever he went. I thought of him recently because right now across the world we are building millions of machines with exactly his problem. They generate tremendous heat, they must be kept cool at any cost, and the cost of keeping them cool is becoming one of the biggest questions of our time. These machines are data centers, the invisible warehouse behind every ChatGPT query, every UPI payment, every reel you watch this morning. And the search for code has become so desperate that the smartest people on the planet are now looking beyond the planet. Imagine a data center floating in orbit where the sun never set on its solar panels, no electricity bill, no water bill, no land to acquire, and the freezing emptiness of space cooling it for free. One tech giant talk of a million satellites working as computers in the sky, and another dream of a group of machines wrapped around the sun itself, drinking its energy directly. It sounds like a film, but the real money is moving. Real chips have already flown, and a launch date as early as next year has been spoken aloud. But before we reach the orbit, this story matters most right here at home. India is in the middle of the largest data center build out in its history, with over $250 billion committed in just past 12 months, and villages near Vizag are becoming sites for some of the biggest computing campuses in the world. So in this episode, let us understand what these machines really are, why they are coming to India in such numbers, how the world is solving their cooling and water challenges from the seafloor of Shanghai to the satellite in orbit, and what all this means for our economy. So let us get into the details of this in today's episode of Logistically Speaking. Let me start in Karluvada, a quiet village 30 kilometers from Visakhapatnam, which has suddenly found itself on the global technology map because Google chose it as one of the 3 sites for its $15 billion AI hub, the company's largest data center project outside the United States. And Reliance is building its own giga campus nearby, and Sifi is laying submarine cables. In fact, many people now jokingly call Vizag as AI Patnam. Andhra Pradesh is talking about 6.5 gigawatt of capacity, which is an interesting figure because India's entire installed data capacity after 30 years of IT growth stood at only around 2.2 gigawatts at the end of 2025. In fact, Google's 3 Vizag site alone will hold 2.5 gigawatt. That means one city and one project alone will be more than the whole country's history. So, why is this money flooding in now? There are 3 reasons linked like a chain. First, data sovereignty. India has said data generator here must be stored here, and that needs domestic computing capacity. Second, the AI race. No country wants to rent its intelligence from someone else's servers. And third, for the states, this is a new factory. Not merely the data center, but the power electronics, the cooling system, the server rack, the subsea cables, and an entire industrial ecosystem landing on their coast. For a logistic enthusiast, the subsea cables are the fascinating part, as these links means global data will flow through India to Australia, to the US West Coast, and to West Asia. Data has its own trade lanes now, and India is positioning itself as a transshipment hub for information, the way Singapore became one for containers. And the ambition goes further. The center is drawing up roadmap to make India as a hub for what are called data embassies. Think about that phrase. A data embassy is a secure data center on Indian soil, but legally protected under the laws of the foreign country that owns it through a bilateral agreement, exactly the same way a physical embassy works. Nations and corporations want a safe vault for their most critical data, and India wants to be that vault for the world. The numbers are striking. In the past 12 months alone, over $250 billion have been committed for new data center capacity across India, and the market is projected to grow from about $9 billion to over 31 billion by 2035, and India has climbed from 13 to 6 in the world in operational data center in just 2 years. But this growth story also turned geopolitical recently. Almost everything inside this building, the servers, the GPUs, the cooling system, the optical transceivers that move data at the speed of light is imported. The latest reports say that Washington is drafting restrictions on Chinese-made data center components, citing security of the infrastructure behind all these data center and the AI boom. And Beijing has objected strongly against what it calls unfair targeting of its companies. This shows why the roadmap is thinking ahead, thinking of indigenous hardware manufacturing, Indian standards, and a skilled workforce, so that the country hosting the world's data also over time makes the machines that hold it. The buildings are the easy part, the contents are the hard part, and that is exactly where the roadmap points out. And now the machine's secret. They do not just eat electricity, but they drink water also. 1 megawatt data center can use up to 25 million liters a year for cooling, and Google alone across its global fleet consumed roughly 31 billion liters in 2024. Water is precious for every country, and climate change makes its availability even more unpredictable. At the same time, these projects bring employment and investment, so the question about water are the same natural question communities elsewhere, including the America, are asking. And this is where geography becomes a quite advantage. Locating data center near the coast where water completes their journey to the sea opens up practical solutions. Seawater desalination plants drawing from river water that would otherwise flow into the ocean, and wastewater recycling. Nearly 3000 TMC of Godavari water flows unused into the sea every year, while the entire plant capacity would need only about 1 TMC. Add dedicated captive renewable power so that the grid supply for homes and industries is not touched, and new cooling technology that has already cut water consumption by up to 80%, with some companies even talking of data center that become net producers of drinking water by making seawater potable. So yes, data centers do consume resources, but with the right technology and planning, and that planning is visibly underway, those costs are manageable. The question was never whether to welcome them, but how to host them well, and that work has already begun. Now the story takes its first strange turn. If cooling is a problem, some engineers ask, why fight the heat at all? Why not put the data center inside the world's largest natural cooler, the ocean itself? Microsoft tried it first off Scotland, proved it worked, then quietly shelved it. China picked up the idea and it ran it. And in May this year, off Shanghai, the world's first commercial underwater data center powered by offshore wind went live. Picture it, sealed pressure-resistant capsule 35 meters under the sea, holding 2000 servers and seawater carrying the heat away for free, and more than 50 wind turbines spinning above the waves. Cooling normally eats a third of data centers' electricity, and this facility saves 30 to 40% on its power bill, uses almost no fresh water, almost no land, and China sees it as a pilot for much bigger deployment. And for a coastal nation like India with 7,500 kilometers of shoreline and seawater cooling already in Visakhapatnam conversation, this is worth watching closely. One question the scientists raise is that, and sometimes we do not yet fully know, is what warm water discharge does to the marine life at scale. And if the sea is not dramatic enough, the story now leaves the planet altogether, because the biggest names in technology are openly talking about putting data centers in the space. The logic is elegant. In orbit, the sun shines continuously, power without night, without clouds, without monsoon. And space is cold. So your Mr. Freeze machines finally get their natural habitat. Sam Altman of OpenAI has mused about Dyson Sphere, a swarm of energy collectors around the sun. It's like a science fiction that billionaires now discuss in interviews. Elon Musk's SpaceX has declared a goal of 1 million satellites operating as orbital data centers, and he says it will happen within few years. Google has its quieter project Suncatcher, targeting sun-powered data centers in space as early as 2027, and a startup called StarCloud has already flown an NVIDIA AI chip on its satellite. But interestingly, old man, the man who dreams of Dyson spheres, recently called Musk's orbital plan ridiculous for this decade. His reasons are painfully practical. Chips fail constantly and you cannot send a technician into orbit with a screwdriver. Launch costs are enormous, and ironically, cooling in space is harder than it sounds because vacuum has no air and no water to carry heat away, and everything must radiate out slowly. So, space may be the destination, but for the next many years, the data center will be built on land, which brings the story back to Tarluvada. So let me bring the threads together. A village in Andhra, a wind-powered capsule under the East China Sea, and a billionaire argument about satellite. All the same story of a civilization that has built machine smarter than anything before and is now discovering that intelligence has a utility bill. For India, the investment deserves a welcome with open arms, with jobs, the cables, the ecosystem, and it is encouraging to see the planning going with it, the desalination plants, the renewable corridors, the roadmap for indigenous hardware and skilled manpower. The countries that get this combination right will host the future. And India for once is not arriving late to a revolution. It is standing at the front gate while this revolution is arriving. Going back to the Batman movie, Mr. Freeze was not evil by choice. He simply needed the cold and did not care what it cost everyone else. Our machines also need the cold, but it is up to us to make sure that care extends to everyone. Thank you for watching till the end. If this episode made you think, share it with one person who believes the cloud is actually in the sky. I will see you next week.